Hey y'all, it's week 4 of the Pantry Challenge, trying to use up things from my freezer, refrigerator, and pantry. Today I'm going to make white chicken chili, and here are my ingredients. I ended up didn't use the garlic, I just used garlic powder because I really wanted to get this on the table in a hurry, so this only took me about 15 minutes. And you want to put your cream cheese out and let that get softened. And I've got some oil in the pan, and I'm going to cut up those onions. I needed to use them up, so I used about 3 or 4 of those small onions. Cut those up. Now I'm going to cook them just until they're translucent. And now I'm going to go ahead and add the cream cheese. You could also put this cream cheese in the microwave. It melts really good. And this is another way I use Alfredo too. I just make that put the cream cheese in there with broth and a little bit of half and half and some butter, and it's really good. So this softened up really, really easy, and I'm adding in just a little bit of chicken broth that I defrosted from the freezer, and I'm going to make it into a sauce. And it only took just a minute or so, and it was really smooth and didn't have any lumps in it. And now I'm going to add in the rest of that chicken broth that was in the freezer. It's still not all the way thawed out, but it will when I put the rest of the ingredients in there and just let it simmer on the stove. So now I'm going to add in some heavy cream. I like to keep that on hand. It lasts a long time in your refrigerator, but you could also add in half and half or milk. And I'm adding in my canned chicken and a can of green chilies. I love green chilies. I always have to have them on my shelf. I'm running low, so I'm going to have to probably go to the grocery store in a couple days. And I'm just adding in some salt and pepper, and also adding in a little dash of cumin. That really added a great flavor to it. And now I'm going to add in some cheese. This was just what I had in the fridge from a charcuterie board we had a couple weeks ago that my daughter bought. So I'm going to stir that in there and get rid of that out of the refrigerator. And that was it. It only took like 15 minutes, and we were ready to eat. And I'm going to go ahead and top that with some cheese and some sour cream. And I also had some pickled jalapenos that I had canned, so I topped that on there as well. And this was so good. And if you're not doing low carb, it would be great with some chips too. So quick and easy meal tonight. So now I've got some chicken that I had thawed out, and I'm going to brown it on both sides. This is going to be it's going to have more cream cheese. I'm going to mix that with some regular cheese and top it with some spinach too, and make like a creamy coating on top of the cheese, so on top of the chicken. So I'm going to brown it on both sides. So I took a paper towel and dried the chicken off as good as I could on one side, and now I'm browning some avocado oil. I've got salt, pepper, onion powder, and garlic powder on the chicken, and I'm going to put that in the pan, and then I'll dry off the other side so my spices will stick. So I'm just going to dry that side, and then I'll spray it with some more oil after it's dried, and that way the salt and pepper and everything will stick to that side. So I'm just going to go ahead and do that on both sides and let it brown and get done, and then we'll put our coating on the top, and I'll show you how I make that. I'll have the recipe down below that I used, but I just used some cream cheese and melted that, and I just melted that in the microwave, and then put some sour cream in there and shredded in some mozzarella and some Parmesan cheese. And now my chicken is brown, so I'm going to go ahead and put that in my pan. And I love this stainless steel pan, y'all. I will have the link below, and it even has a lid. So I'm just going to take that out. This is what is going to go in the oven. So I'm going to take those chicken pieces out, and make sure you make them the same size. Some of these were a little bit thicker than others, so I had to take the ones out that were smaller and then let the other bigger ones cook. So now I'm going to go ahead and put the spinach in there. I had a bag of spinach in there that I found. Half of it was a little bit no good, so I saved what I could out of it. So I thought I'll just put that in the pan and let that cook down, and add that to the cream cheese and put that on the chicken. So I'm just going to add a little bit more of the oil. I'll just cook that until it wilts down. And then I'll just add that to the cheese mixture and mix that together, and then I will top that on the chicken, and then I'll add some cheese on the top of that, and we'll bake it in the oven. And I just love these pans because they brown really easy and they don't really stick like a sheet tray. So I'm glad I got these, and they even, like I said, they even have a lid, so you could even make this and put it in the freezer and put your lid on there, and or just make extra of something and have that in the pan. So like I said, I'll have this pan linked down below in the description box. So I'm just going to top that with the cheese, and I'll put that in the oven, and all we're going to do is let that cheese melt on the top, and then it'll be ready to eat. I mean, come on, y'all, does that not look delicious? This was so good. I don't know why I've never made this before, and I just made some steamed broccoli with it, and it didn't take but about 30 minutes to put this whole dinner together. So I highly recommend y'all make this recipe. It is so good, and it only took 30 minutes, so can't beat that. This is a family favorite. I took some of that ground beef that I had in the freezer and a pepper that I chopped up, and I'm adding in some more green chilies, and I'm going to mix that up, and I'm going to kind of have to make Doug a different meal than ours. And I forgot about the corn in the salsa, but I added in some salsa. It's not a whole lot of carbs, but we got to have a little bit anyway, right? So I mixed that up with some taco seasoning, and this is going to bake in the oven. And I'm going to use a crescent roll, and I'm going to use low carb tortillas for his. But here's another one of those pans that I love. So I'm taking those low carb tortillas that I only had the smaller one, so I'm going to have to layer those. And I put 4 of those down. And I'm going to take that taco mixture and kind of make it like a lazy burrito or a lazy quesadilla. So I'm just going to layer 1 layer on the top, and then I'll add cheese, and then I'll layer some more of those tortillas and that on the top, and then the rest cheese. And I'll pop that in the oven. And while that's heating up, I'm going to go ahead and start on the crescent one, because my daughter and the kids love that. Jackson really loved it, my grandson. So I just took crescent rolls. FYI, they did say they expired in August, but I used them anyway, and they were still good. And I should have used a bigger pan, but I just used the smaller pan. So I'm just going to put that in the oven for just a few minutes and let that brown. And now I'm going to take that out, and I'm going to spoon that mixture on here. This is just stupid easy, but it's so good. We really love it, and my grandson just raved about it. So I'm going to take that and layer that on the crescent roll, and then you just add cheese on there, and then you bake it. And then when it comes out of the oven after the cheese is melted, you'll just add your toppings on there, just kind of like a taco, but it's made on a crescent roll. And Doug's is done, or it's almost done. I think it needs to melt a little bit more. So I'm going to put those back in the oven. And now we're ready to eat. They both came out really delicious, and I'm going to add some shredded cheese and some shredded lettuce and some tomato on top. And then we'll top it with some sour cream. You need to make this at least once a week, because it just comes together so easy, and the grandkids really love it. And my daughter actually requests this for her birthday dinner, so it's that good, y'all. Even though it might look simple, it is really good. This was Jackson's second plate. Jonah was a little bit hesitant. I don't think he thought he was going to like it, but he finally started eating it, and he ate it all too. So this is a family favorite you got to try. Since I'm cleaning out the freezer, I found these bones, and I'm going to roast them in the oven and make some bone broth, some beef bone broth. These smelled so good while they were cooking. I was going to can them, but since we had all this bad weather, I didn't get that done, so I just ended up putting them in the freezer. I just roasted them in the oven for overnight, and then I took them out and cooked them a little bit more on 220, and now they're done, and they smell amazing, y'all. And they've got all that stuff came out, the marrow came out of the middle, and it makes the most delicious bone broth. I'm going to put that in the refrigerator and let the fat solidify on the top. Tonight's going to be another one of those dinners where you just throw it together on the fly. I've got some potatoes cooking in the pressure cooker. I've got some cabbage here that I added some of that broth and some of that fat off the top. And I'm going to season that up with some salt and pepper. This was so good, y'all, especially using that bone broth and that fat. It just really made it over the top. I took those potatoes from the pressure cooker and browned those up a little bit, and then I added some sausage and some frozen zucchini to that. And I know Doug couldn't have it, but I had to have some potatoes, so that was what was dinner tonight. And now I'm going to make a potato corn chowder for me because Doug's not going to be eating dinner. So that's lucky for me because I've got those potatoes in there that I've cut up. Those potatoes are past their prime, but those were the last of my red potatoes that I've got. So I'm going to pressure cook those for about 10 minutes. Then those are done, so I'm just set them aside, and I've got some butter and some onion and some bacon that I had left over from the other day. And I've got some broth out of the freezer that I'm going to thaw out. I added in some corn from the freezer that I had frozen from last year. It tastes just like it did when I put it in the bag. It was so good. So then I'm going to let that heat up, and I'll add in that broth that I put in the microwave and just enough to let it come out of the container, and then I'll just let that cook with all that corn and bacon. Then I'll add in those potatoes, and I like to put them in whole, or I mean in those big chunks. That way when they break down, they'll get all through that soup and make it even creamier. Alright, it simmered for about 15 minutes, and now I'm adding in some heavy cream. You could also add in milk or half and half if you want, and canned milk is even good too. I like to have that in my pantry for emergencies when I run out of milk. So I'm just going to let that cook for a few minutes. Finally got all my fall stuff out, and I found this pumpkin bowl. I thought that would be so cute to put my soup or my chowder in. This was so good. I added in some shredded up cheese, and I added in some chives. Y'all, I've got to make this. This was so good and so simple and easy. And with all this rain and cold weather that we're having, this just hit the spot. And plus, it's just so adorable in this bowl. And this is what my bone broth looked like after it got out of the fridge. That hardened up, and you can use that just like if you could use bacon grease. You can use that for cooking. And then I'm going to put the bone broth in the freezer, and you could just make soup with that, or you could just drink it. It's really good for you. So I'm just going to put those in the freezer. Since I've been using so much chicken broth, I finally got some bone broth. And I'll put that fat in the refrigerator, and I can use that when I'm cooking potatoes or maybe a hamburger. That would be good. And it'll last a pretty long time in the freezer or the refrigerator. Alright, y'all, I defrosted these thin sliced chicken breasts, and this was so good. My daughter said it was one of my top 5. Doug loved it too. Trying to do a one way low carb and one way not. So I'm going to start with my chicken. I cut it up in small pieces. You want to cook it in really high heat to get some browning on there without it overcooking, because we're going to brown it, and then we're going to take it out of the pan and let it rest while I finish the rest of it. I'm making white rice, and I'll make Doug some cauliflower rice that I had in the freezer. So I'm just going to make this minute rice I already had in the pantry. My chicken is brown, so I'm going to take that out of the pan, and I'm going to cut up an onion and get that going. And I just added a little bit more oil in the pan. I added a little bit more oil to it, and that onion is going to pick up all those juices in the pan from all those brown bits. And I'm just going to cook that until they're tender. I had some broccoli left over from the other night, so I'm going to go ahead and add that to the pan and let that cook. I'm going to kind of chop it up just a little bit in more smaller pieces so it'll grow further. And now I'm going to add in my chicken back, and I'm just going to let that cook for just a second. You don't want to overcook your chicken. I'm going to take out some for Doug. I've got a sauce for him, and for mine and Jordan's, we're going to put in some sauce that I had in the fridge. This honey sesame is so good. I hope Aldi sells it again, because I'm going to go back and get 5 bottles of it. And then I'm going to add in some soy sauce, and this made just the perfect sauce for it. I did end up having to pour in a little bit more of the sesame. I used the rest of that sesame sauce and a little bit more soy sauce just to make it really saucy, so we could pour it over our rice. This was definitely my favorite of the whole month. I'll definitely have to make this again. And I did have to buy some sauces for Doug, just because I want to make it easier for me to make dinners, and then I can customize them for him instead of making the same thing over and over. So I did get a barbecue sauce, a sugar-free teriyaki sauce, and the sugar-free stir-fry sauce. So I'm just going to mix that together with his and put a little bit more in there so he can have some sauce to put over that cauliflower rice. So even with all those sauces, I did end up spending about $30, but that was for the sauces, for some bread and some milk and that was about it. I still have a long way to go to clear out stuff from my freezer, but I am very happy with this month, only spending $30 for groceries. So I hope y'all have a wonderful weekend, and I'll see y'all in the next video.